the Phantom of the Salish Sea. Vancouver Island had always been known for its dense fog, but the mist that rolled into Tofino one October evening was different. It carried the scent of brine and decay, something ancient lurking just beyond the surf. Ethan Calloway, a fisherman and lifelong resident, was tying up his boat at the dock when he saw it. A ship, massive and silent, gliding through the fog. At first, he thought it was some historic vessel, a relic of the past making its way to the harbor. But as it loomed closer, he realized something was terribly wrong. The sails were torn, flapping soundlessly in the windless air. The hull, blackened and scarred, seemed half submerged, as if the ship had been rotting at the bottom of the ocean before rising again. Lanterns flickered along the deck, casting eerie, greenish light. And then he saw them, the crew. Figures stood motionless along the railing, tattered coats and hollow faces, watching. Their eyes, if they had any, were black pits of hunger. Ethan staggered backward, his breath caught in his throat. Then, in the silence, a bell tolled, a deep, mournful chime that reverberated through the harbor. The ship vanished into the mist. Ethan didn't sleep that night, and by morning, the rumors had begun. The old men at the rusty anchor pub spoke in whispers, glancing over their shoulders as they told the tale. "That's the Devil's Lantern, boy," said old Tom, a retired fisherman whose hands trembled over his pint. "She sank near these waters over 300 years ago. A pirate ship cursed to roam the Salish Sea, hunting for souls." The legend was well known on the island. The Devil's Lantern had belonged to Captain Red Jack MacAllister, a ruthless Scottish pirate who had terrorized the Pacific Northwest in the late 1600s. He and his crew raided indigenous villages, Spanish galleons, and English trading ships alike. But Red Jack had angered the wrong people. A shaman from the Nucha-North Nation placed a curse upon him, declaring that neither he nor his men would ever rest. When the Royal Navy finally caught up to the pirate, his ship was set ablaze and sent to the ocean floor. "But he ain't stayed down, has he?" old Tom muttered. "Every few decades that ship comes back. And whenever it does, people go missing." Ethan scoffed. Ghost stories. But deep down, he wasn't so sure anymore. That night, the bell tolled again. It was Kyle Montgomery, a dock worker. One moment he was unloading crates at the marina, the next he was gone. The security footage showed him standing near the pier, staring out into the fog. Then, his body stiffened, his head slowly turning as if he had heard something. A shadow moved across the water. Kyle walked forward. No hesitation, no struggle, just obedience, as if something called him. He stepped off the dock into the mist. His body was never found. The town was in a panic. People whispered of the curse, of the ghost ship taking its first victim. Some packed their bags, left town. Others, like Ethan, decided to fight. He wasn't the only one. A group of locals, fishermen, sailors, historians, gathered to uncover the truth. That's when they found the journal. Buried in the archives of the Royal British Columbia Museum was an old, leather-bound book, water-damaged but still legible. It belonged to Samuel Graves, a cabin boy aboard the HMS Valiant, the Royal Navy vessel that hunted Captain Red Jack. The entries were chilling. June 14th, 1692. "The pirate ship is unlike anything I've seen. At night, it glows with an unholy light. Captain says it's just the lanterns, but I feel watched. June 20th, 1692. We captured one of his men. He screamed about the curse, about how the sea has claimed us, and we shall claim the sea in return. June 27th, 1692. They are not men anymore. July 3rd, 1692. The lantern's crew do not die. We set their ship aflame, but in the smoke, I swear I saw their burned bodies still standing, still watching. July 10th, 1692. Red Jack whispered to me from the water. He said, "Your time will come, boy." The final entry was smeared in ink. The only legible words were, "The bell toll, the bell toll, the bell toll." That night, the fog returned, thicker than ever. Ethan and his group stood at the pier, weapons in hand. Shotguns, harpoons, flare guns. And then they saw it. The Devil's Lantern emerged from the mist, rotting but impossibly intact. The smell of salt and decay filled the air. The crew, or what was left of them, stood at the railing, their empty eye sockets staring down. And then, from the deck, a figure stepped forward. Red Jack MacAllister. His coat was charred, his flesh burned and blackened, yet he stood tall, grinning through shattered teeth. He raised his cutlass, and the bell tolled. The fog rushed forward like a living thing, curling around Ethan's crew, pulling at their limbs. Kyle Montgomery's voice whispered from the mist, "Join us." One by one, the men began to walk forward, their eyes glazed, their expressions empty. Ethan fought. He grabbed a flare gun, fired it directly at Red Jack. The ghost pirate laughed. But the moment the flare hit the ship's mast, it ignited. The ship began to burn again. Red Jack screamed, and for the first time, his men hesitated. The bell tolled erratically, as if panicking. Ethan grabbed a gas canister, hurled it onto the deck. Another flare, another explosion. The crew shrieked, their bodies collapsing into the fire, their hollow voices rising in an unearthly wail. The ship began to sink. Red Jack reached out, his charred hand inches from Ethan, before the water swallowed him whole. The fog vanished, and the bell rang no more. By morning, Kyle's body washed ashore. His face was calm, as if he had finally found peace. The Devil's Lantern never returned, but sometimes, on the foggiest nights, Ethan still hears the faint echo of a bell. And he knows Red Jack is still waiting somewhere beneath the sea.